And you kind of touched on it earlier, some of the lakes, but also a lot of these protected bodies of water, coastal communities, whether it's here in Virginia Beach or Savannah or Wilmington or, Jersey. Like there's a lot of these protected bodies of water where a good day of boating is only 10 to 20 miles. And a lot of that time is spent anchored out, which doesn't consume hardly any electricity.
Yeah, your stereo system is not going to wear down a 80 kilowatt hour battery. Or actually, they're probably bigger in your instance. I mean, how big are those battery packs?
On our, I'd say mid-size boats, 126 kilowatt hours. So there's a lot of power. And we've got some boats with some ridiculous number of speakers and subwoofers on them. And even then, it's like 10% in an entire day. And that's like really blaring the music. I tested it out the other weekend. It was pretty great.
What's interesting to me is that the electric boating space is not new. It's just evolved because for the longest time you had those smaller bodies of water that you weren't allowed to have a gas powered engine, or they were just they were preserves. They had electric trolling motors and a 12-volt car battery, or maybe two 6-volt golf cart batteries stuck together, so you get a little bit extra juice out of them. This is just the progression of that, and in a more modern way. Which is interesting because the people that are against it may have even had a boat like that, even growing up. And this, like I said, it's nothing more than a progression.
Right. And Duffy has been making boats. They're mainly in Newport Beach, but they've been doing boats since the 70s. And like Elko had the first electric boat in like 1893 at the Chicago Fair. But like these have been around for a long time. It's just now batteries are getting more energy dense. We're getting planing hulls that are, electric. It's a step up from those slow cruisers that everybody was used to. And that's where things get exciting. And don't get me wrong, like they consume a ridiculous energy at 20, 30 plus miles an hour. But for some people, they don't do that for a long period of time. We just interviewed a boat rental company, and they go up at high speeds for like 5 minutes to show people what they can do a couple maneuvers. But people are enjoying just going out there and cruising around at slower speeds. So I don't know. In the right environment, it's great. If you're in Florida and you want to haul down to the Bahamas, like it's not the boat for you. But for a lot of boaters, like there's a social aspect to it. And you're not doing much talking when you're doing 30, 40 miles an hour and the wind is, way too loud for you to have a conversation.
Exactly. Speaking of the progression, I've seen Elko's stuff before. There's plenty of guys that, well, I shouldn't say plenty of guys. I've seen a few instances where they've taken sailboats and replaced a 3-cylinder diesel engine, and then actually installed a generator to charge their battery bank with supplemental solar power, which I thought was interesting. It's like a hybrid boat. Are you involved with Elko at all?
Yeah, we're a dealer for them. We've done a couple repowers. I think the biggest so far we've done is a 50 horsepower setup. Batteries get expensive pretty quickly and heavy also. So it really takes the right application. We have a couple discovery calls every single week with people like, hey, I want to repower my boat. I want to replace this 150 on the back. And, we do a discovery call and chat with them. And it's like, oh, you go boating you go fishing and it's an hour and a half away, you're out there trolling, and then an hour and a half back. It's like you would need like 150 grand worth of batteries, so a lot of them don't make sense. But then there's some guys, we're in the middle of a Nordic, this guy's wanting to repower a big trawler, and it's a 40-foot trawler, and he only wants to go 10 knots. And don't get me wrong, he wants to do it for like 80 miles, but it's going to be a massive boat. There's a lot of people like that don't need high speed runs. So a lot of those repowers, whether it's a hybrid or a full electric, can make sense. We've probably got 4 or 5 in our pipeline right now.
No kidding. I've seen a Scout with I'm trying to remember the name of the outboard on it. Flux, that's what it was.
Yeah. They're out of Bristol, Rhode Island. Super cool company. I was actually up there a couple months ago.
Yeah, and I travel all the boat shows, or at least the boat shows that I can get to. And I've talked to some of the Mercury guys too. It's interesting, and I've talked about this on one of my last podcasts. They told me in verbatim they could build a 600 horsepower electric outboard tomorrow. And he said the limiting factor is just the size of the batteries. And he goes, as the battery technology gets more dense, energy dense, they'll be able to produce that. But with current battery tech, they're just like, hey, can't do it. But back to the actual powering unit. I've seen electric drives. We've got outboards, inboards, and a couple IO options as well. And you guys are dealing with all of those options in terms of repowers and even some of the EV boats that you're offering. What is the most popular right now and why?
Kind of a mixed bag, man. We don't have like a number one seller. I mean, we do probably, it'd be the cocktail boats or the jet skis just because they're lower priced. We move higher volume of those. It's funny because whenever you have an outdrive on a boat, it is the loudest part of a boat. Like you don't hear the motor, you don't hear anything else. The outdrive's pretty loud. And even the lower end on some motors, Vision Marine makes a 180 horsepower motor, and like the bottom end is you can clearly hear it's pretty distinct. And Flux kind of recognize that, and also the inefficiencies of it. And they've got this really cool belt driven setup, and it is almost silent. It's pretty crazy. And then like X-Shore, they've got it's just a motor to a straight shaft to a prop, and it is like as quiet as it would get. I absolutely love it. But it's also like a rudder over prop, so maneuverability at lower speeds is a little interesting, and that's why it has a bow thruster on it. But yeah, so there's a few different options out there. I don't know if there's, I think X-Shore's probably delivered more high-speed boats than anybody, but that's kind of just they've been doing it the longest. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how things go over the next few years. There's going to be some consolidation. There already has been. We've lost some pretty big key players out there, which has been unfortunate. But
Yamaha bought Torqeedo, right?
yeah, which is going to be exciting because they're one of the huge players in the space. And I mean, they're probably one of the most expensive in terms of price per horsepower or price per kilowatt hour. Some would say you get what you pay for, but yeah, between them and e-propulsion, they're ramping up big time, which is exciting.